something that I have simply run out of patience for. I have exhausted my final nerve on, is debating the subject of objective morality with atheists. And here's the kind of the clincher on it. This is the clincher. That I'm more than willing to concede the idea that people are willing to generally behave themselves in socially capped, subjectively moral fashions. That if they are given clear instructions and they perceive those instructions as reasonable or acceptable, they'll usually abide within them to a general limitations. They might, like, for instance, speed limits is a good example, maybe. That in a 55, most people will not exceed 65 miles an hour. Of course, there's the occasional transgressor that'll go 75 or 85, but generally, those people are the exception, not the rule. So, even the smallest children, you see this idea that if you give them clear and acute instructions with refined goals and metrics for accomplishment and so forth, they're usually fairly compliant. But you also see the fact that even in those circumstances, the human nature is rebellious, disobedient, recalcitrant, right? So, anyway, the reason all of this has come up is the idea that it is no longer refutable in my mind, as far as the way I'm perceiving it, the idea that you cannot be truly moral, let's say unconditionally altruistic, or morally upright, apart from a belief in the Judeo-Christian God, Jesus especially. And the reason that all of this has been churned up is that the golden boy of atheism, specifically on the subject of objective morality, Sam Harris, was recently on, I think it was Triggered Podcast, in which they were discussing various things, and of course it slipped into the matter of politics, and he, in an unprompted statement, said that he didn't care what the information was on Hunter Biden's laptop, that he could have had the remains of dead children in his basement. It wouldn't have mattered to him whatsoever, so long as it gets the orange man bag out of the White House. To me, this appears, and of course I'm paraphrasing there, you need to go there and you need to actually find it on your own and see it. It's actually far worse than even the way I'm portraying it. But, like, supposedly he's been the champion for decades now. The idea of objective morality is help harm. That he's willing to overlook the harm, hypothetically, of course, overlook the harm to the most vulnerable of individuals, children. The evidence thereof, if his political objectives are achieved in the process. And obviously, there's the accusations of hypocrisy, and I think he, as well as many, would say, well, we're all just hypocrites, no big deal. And in that, it shows the idea that objective morality does exist, but it clearly is not attainable through human methods. That we can know that it does exist, that it does in itself exist, and that we cannot attain it in ourselves. Which is actually someone might try to controvert me on this and say that, well, doesn't that refute the idea of the Christian worldview, right? Objective morality. And no, because one of the hinge pins of the Christian perspective on objective morality is that it's transcendence, it's unattainability, that you can know that it exists because it's within the nature of God, and you can ascertain the nature of God based on the created things of God, basically from effect to cause logic. But that doesn't mean we can acquire it or that we can achieve it in and of ourselves due to the fact that we know that we are corrupted. So that's basically it. Like I said, my patience is basically at a deficit on this issue. I'm not willing to entertain statements from atheists claiming that they can be objectively moral when, in fact, even their supposed champions are willing to ideologically sell the store in order to achieve temporary political objectives. That doesn't make any sense to me.